Right
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Because it's time to write now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right.
All right, and we are live. Welcome, my friends, to our next Right Now Writers Group. This is one of our pretty cool sessions. I was like, I'll switch to this screen. This is one of our pretty cool sessions where essentially we'll come together as writers, we chat about writing, and we just connect because there's always a consistency and accountability piece that helps when you're just showing up and you're interacting and talking with other writers. It makes such a difference. So come join us, whether you're going to stay in the comments or come join us on screen for future sessions. All writers are welcome. Awesome. You guys know me, Kaufman, on a mission to help writers write more, put dragons on it, do all the things. And that is where I'm at. I've been working on Scarecrow consistently. Nearly every stream for the past 2 years. You guys know that I haven't really changed at all. So Calvin, so what are you guys working on today?
Okay. I am working on chapter 20 on Nox Infinita, which I may change the title of and save that title for the third book, but that is a coin flip, and I'm working on that later. Can't really worry about the title when I haven't gotten the book written yet.
I always feel, though, it's good to have a placeholder for a book. I always feel like placeholder title is always smart because everybody's going to ask you about the book, and they're like, all right, well, it's that one book. That's book 2 of a series. Mm-hmm. And I think Nox Infinita is kind of an interesting name. I'm intrigued by that.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Awesome.
Well, go on.
No, Calvin, what were you going to say, man?
Well, I was thinking about for the third book because the third book takes place on a planet where it is nothing but nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
It is infinite night. So I was thinking about, that's what I was thinking about. Well, it more describes the third book, but I don't know. It's like I said, I'm going back and forth between Nox Infinita and the Outer Colony War. So
it's kind of interesting. I mean, with the first book being really as the Tyrus campaign, I know Storm Chronicles. I mean, the first book really focuses on the campaign itself. So then if you're going to follow a similar rhyming or a similar naming structure, I would assume that it would be based off something that has to do with the war or the campaign in the second book.
Well, in the second book, there are multiple campaigns on multiple fronts that we're doing, so
that totally makes sense.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not just one campaign they're fighting. Now they're fighting, I think before the end of the book they're gonna have fought 3 campaigns.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah. So that actually makes sense because you're increasing the stakes. So I'm actually not surprised by that. Sometimes I feel like the name will come by the end of the book though. I feel like it will, because once you get like a solid concept of the characters, the stories, more names will come to you and you'll probably get a better idea. I feel like names of books is like a thing that it's like an aha moment writers have for their books.
I have to agree with that.
So you're muted.
Oh, I am? Okay then. Did not realize I was muted.
No, you're still muted.
No,
Jeez.
I can hear her.
Oh, you can't? Oh my goodness. Soul looks muted on my end. I was like, I clearly have to. All right, well, Soul, you keep talking since it's clearly a me thing.
No, I'll just say with names, when I first made Pirates, that was supposed to be the name of it. It was just Pirates. But when I actually started making it into a trilogy, I had to think of like a theme.
Right. So you keep going. I'm going to refresh.
All right. I actually decided to go with a theme with it, and that turned out to be fire. So I ended up going with Burning Ember, Shifting Flame, and then Raging Inferno. And then there's the novella, which takes place between books 2 and 3, which is The Glowing Timepiece. Mm-hmm. And there is another novella, which is the 5 chapters per each book that is also going to have like a flame-based name, but I haven't come across that one yet. But from the moment I knew Burning Ember, I knew the other 2 within like a few days. But then again, that entire trilogy was based off one character and his abilities. So it was just kind of like there's nothing that could ever work better. And then like Animal Instincts and one of my other books, and then Transfer, those were weird because Animal Instincts, I had the name first.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wanted to do something with animals, but like specifically with anthros, furries, and Animal Instincts actually just kind of worked out better. And it was supposed to be a placeholder, but it turned out to be perfect when I started getting the storyline. And then Transfer is a lot different. That one, I might keep the name, I may not, because the whole concept revolves around humans existing as brain chips that can actually be plugged into like the back of your head,
Mm-hmm.
and you can literally transfer from one body to another as easily as you would take a USB from one computer to another.
Oh, so that sounds like Ghost in a Shell.
It does a little bit. It kind of has that like tech, that like futuristic tech vibe. It does.
I have not seen that. I might have to watch that now just to make sure I don't do anything.
That's copying. Yeah, that is total. It's funny when we come up with something that like in ourselves it's original, and we haven't seen another piece of work, and then we find out that it's really closely similar to something that's pre-existing, even though like it was just and that happens. That totally happens.
Oh yeah. I've actually done that. This was not going to be like a published thing. This was just for fun. But when I was trying to write hosted games, I actually made one for Warriors. And hilariously, I had the entire storyline planned out. I was ready to write it. And the next arc of Warriors came out, and I swear to God, it was the same thing I had planned. And it's like, why?
Oh man, happens to the best of us.
As long as you don't have an intelligence unit going on clandestine missions, you're in the clear.
I know Eli was saying that he made the name Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne, and then one day had a huge revelation about how it could work, and that sort of unlocked the story for him, which Eli, it's super cool. I love that title. I think that's an awesome title, by the way.
It is.
And I think about myself, and I think about naming scare for some reason. Always from the very beginning of the story, when I came up with the idea that I was going to turn it into a book, The Last Scarecrow just was always the name. Now the challenge was there was another book that was published last year called Last Scarecrow, which was originally written on Wattpad in 2020. They were picked up by an indie publisher in 2022, and they published it officially last year, called Last Scarecrow. I went back and forth on whether or not I should change it, and I decided to stick with it, even though like the slightest difference is The Last Scarecrow. But I think playing on the title of the series is it's part one of a Dawn of Magic series. So I think playing into that helps further distinguish it. But I mean, the journey is like, I think that journey is, it's like the story very much focuses on Scarecrow's journey. And I think the title feels like it was just the right title for it.
Yeah, for some reason, trying to think of it without the in front of it, it doesn't sound bad, but it just, at least for myself, it doesn't sound that catching. But The Last Scarecrow, literally, even without knowing anything about your book, just simply makes me think of, okay, so there's one Scarecrow last in the world.
Yep.
Last Scarecrow does not make me think that.
Last Scarecrow. Yeah. For all you know, with Last Scarecrow, he could have been the last Scarecrow made.
Yeah, that's actually a really valid point, and I think that's why it always came intrinsically to me. And then even in these couple rewrites, like Calvin, I think you were on the stream the other day when I reread the first chapter.
Yeah, it was.
Like,
very good chapter.
I did it. What was that?
I said very good chapter.
Thank you. I've just so like I said, I'm 40% of the way through the book, and there were 2 chapters that I wasn't too happy with throughout what I've done so far, and one of them was the first chapter. And I think we all know, like, you guys have seen how many times I've gone over the blurb, how many times I've redone the blurb. But the first chapter is so important. Like, it's like that time that the reader tries out your book, and if the first chapter isn't incredible, and I wouldn't even say incredible from like a tone perspective, but incredible from like your style has to be clear. Your whatever the promise is of the book has to be clear enough to keep the reader engaged, right? You don't want to like lose the reader after reading the first chapter because they're like, well, this doesn't feel like what was promised in the blurb. So, yeah, I definitely feel like the first chapter has to be good. I came up with a really interesting strategy. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion, actually. So, a lot of fantasy authors will generally do some type of prologue to either set up some type of world building, antagonist, something for the series. Now, I know we've talked about prologues a number of times before, and I don't want to get into the prologue debate, but I've been thinking, so like I asked myself, does book one represent what the entire series is going to be about? Whether it's a trilogy or more books. And I think to an extent it does, but I think because it starts off with our protagonist's journey and it expands to the greater state of the world, I asked myself, is there a way that I can set a clear promise to the reader without doing a prologue? So I thought about, what if I start off the book with like a one-page forward that promises what the tone promises throughout the series.
Mm,
What do you guys think about that?
that might work.
Kind of like a letter to the reader. Forwards are done sometimes. They're usually done more frequently in nonfiction, generally, but they're done on occasion.
Yeah, I had a forward for Burning Ember, and that was just me talking about how the book had been a long process, but that I refused to give up on it.
No,
I
wait,
guess
you
depending
said,
on, sorry.
oh, sorry. So I just missed that last thing you said. What was that?
Basically, what my forward was for Burning Ember, it was just simply me saying that I had worked on this for nearly 20 years before it got published. And
Mm-hmm.
the only reason I didn't give up on it is I didn't want to abandon that story. It meant far too much to me, and I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
see it through.
That makes sense.
So I
That
guess
totally
like with
makes
the forward, it kind of just depends on what exactly I guess you're going to write into it in your story. I guess it's more like a case by case basis, not really a genre
sense.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
but case by case.
I mean, you might want to do research on forwards and see what they came up with, because you don't want your forward sounding like a disclaimer.
That's true.
That's interesting. Interesting. I'd love to hear everybody's thought in the chat as well. I haven't done any research into it. I haven't looked into what industry standards are for forwards. It was just an idea so far. As I've been kind of thinking of, how do I deliver a tone promise for a series without creating a prologue, because I don't think the book needs a prologue. I was like, I thought about writing one, but I don't think a prologue will really serve the book well. So I was trying to think of if there's a way I can get around it. Um, does book one follow the same tone throughout the series? Yes, like it's going to be the same tone throughout, but I think the character journeys expand. And I think book one is like 70% Scarecrow and then 30% a mix of like the supporting characters of the Pixie and the Crow in terms of POV. But that evolves over the course of the series as more and more characters are introduced as part of the world of the series.
Hmm. I think if you're going to do a prologue, you should ask yourself, what is the purpose of the prologue, and what is the reader getting out of it? If
I
you
mean, I
really
think the purpose of the prologue is to give your reader some type of information, whether that is about world building or characters that exists outside of your core story, outside of your core character journey, that they have to know about. Like the one of the best examples, right? I think Wheel of Time. There is the chapter one starts off with our characters in the farm village before everything gets attacked, but the prologue is literally about the magical character basically going mad and killing everybody, and it sets up the magical element for the overall world, and it gives you a grandiose perspective of what the story is going to be about, because the first book is really just not solo, but just like a small group adventure. So I think that's always a great example. And I'm sure people here, if you're here in the chat, I'm sure you probably have great examples of prologues that have worked well in your experience.
When I think of prologues, I think of like the Warrior series because there's a prologue in front of every book, and it really does kind of okay, and it really does set up what's going to happen throughout that book. Sometimes characters are named, sometimes they're not. It just kind of varies from book to book. Most of the time, usually what I see, like especially at the beginning of an arc, is we see something like for the prophecies begin. Blue Star and Spotted Leaf are sitting there together, and Spotted Leaf sees a falling star. And she immediately gets a prophecy that sets the entire series like in motion. Literally, the prophecy actually did not come to an end until 4 arcs later. So
interesting. Okay.
it was, I mean, it was really supposed to be for the first arc, but it didn't end until like 4 arcs later. And it's like, okay, so the prophecy had to do with the first arc, but it also had to do with the 4th arc. So just it had a more far-reaching moment than we expected, but it actually worked, and it gave us a kind of flavor of these prophecies are extremely abstract, and you have no idea what they're going to mean almost until the moment they happen.
You know, Eli threw out a really interesting suggestion, and this was something that I pondered. I pondered this a few months ago, and then I forgot about it, actually, until Eli just recommended it. He said, what if you did like the Lord of the Rings with a ring poem song? If you have something that is like an epigram and provides some kind of hint about the larger theme, it could work. So you got, for any of you guys who've been at Calvin, so I don't know if you guys were here when I read the garden chapter with the characters and the mind controlling plants, but there's a song that I wrote and that I created. I feel good about the song. I feel like it's like second draft. There's still some opportunity for it, but I think this song is supposed to symbolically and thematically really represent kind of what's going on in the world to an extent. So I'd kind of consider that actually might be a good idea. What do you guys think? The opening, because it would be a song, and it would probably be like, but I mean, technically, then it's giving away that story bit by starting with the song first.
You could do the song and then do like a quick passage, just a short little 2-sentence passage, and then let the reader get interested enough, like, okay, I want to explore more to find out what's going on. I mean, to be honest, I've read lots of prologues. Most of them, to be honest, do not even work. Aragon, for example, their prologue, that would have just been, he could have just as easily wrote chapter 1, and it probably would have been better to a certain extent, because his inciting incident should never be in the prologue, and his inciting incident was more in the prologue than it was in chapter 1. Now, the only prologue I've ever believed worked was for a BattleTech book, Mech Warrior book called Call to Arms, where it talked about the main character. He was trying to become a Mech Warrior, and he actually failed. So the prologue is him failing his final Mech Warrior test, and then we go on from there.
And I think Mary also brought up a good point. Mary said that the forward from Google says this comes before the other content in the book. It isn't written by the author. Most authors don't need one. Just from an immediate Google search. That's interesting. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know forwards were generally done by others. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I think maybe that's if you get like a really well-known author, or maybe a well-known individual in the industry to read your book and then provide it's kind of like social proof. It's kind of interesting. But I mean, the only challenge with that is if you've already convinced somebody to read the book, then I don't think they need more social proof. I don't know. On that idea, I'm a little funky, but that's interesting.
I mean, I know you're concerned about giving away part of the book. Richard A. Knack, when he wrote the War of the Ancients series, his actually the first page before you even read chapter 1 is a scene from later on in the book.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I think Lynn had the same thing here. Lynn said that occasionally in romance you have a teaser a few pages from the middle of the book to show the direness of the tone, but it is risky to do. So it's kind of like in that same vein of giving away something from the middle. I guess I ask myself this, right? So if I include the song in the beginning, so that's basically the reader's first experience into the world, which means the reader feels that tonally, which I think that would solve the tone problem. I think if I did the song, I think that would solve it. I mean, alternatively, if I did a prologue, I would probably do the prologue as like a one-page letter of some type, or something that would be like I'd have to think through it. I think that'd be my alternative. But I really don't want to do a prologue that does a character POV.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that to a point. I did that with Pirates myself.
Mhm,
It's kind of more from a it's from a third point. It's from a third point view, but
mhm,
it's not from a specific character. It's more like, think of like a show where the camera is following one character more often than the others,
mhm.
and others just happen to appear, but you're not actually in the head of that character.
That's actually kind of interesting. That's a really interesting idea because then it still has a little like character focus on it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because I know the prologue I did for To Haven's Edge is actually from the character's point of view, and I'm
Hmm.
actually thinking about redoing it because it's not bad.
Hmm.
It's just it goes in the main character's head,
Hmm.
and I don't think, at least I don't think, for most books that I've seen, a prologue shouldn't do that. It can follow a character. It just shouldn't go in their heads.
Mary had a really interesting idea. Mary was like, Kaufman, you can maybe do a prologue about how the world got to be how it is in the story, a general overview like how Star Wars did it. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's not a bad idea. That's definitely another one. A long, long time ago. So like the Star Wars, because that message, same thing with Star Trek, actually does the same thing. This is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise, and where we go where no man has gone before. That whole thing is a prologue. And it's really what it's doing is it's setting a tone promise. So Star Trek and Star Wars, same thing. Um, that's interesting. And I mean, technically, like, are those aren't technically letters? Once upon a long, far, far away in a galaxy, a long, long time ago. Technically, that's like what, like a message. That's like a message to someone. I don't know if that's a letter, but like, yeah, structurally, it's like a message. So that's interesting. It's that same vein.
I mean, in Star Wars, the in a galaxy far, far away, is
Hmm.
more like someone telling the story. That'd be more like someone from the future listening to the story of the past.
Yeah, it's almost like it's the narrator. Yeah, it's almost narratory.
And whereas
Um,
with Star Trek, that's more
mhm,
like, especially with Kirk, he's more like
mhm.
making an entry in his log.
He is, but those are both prologues.
I didn't say.
I think they're different
Oh, I didn't.
styles,
Oh,
but I
I
think
didn't
they're
say they.
accomplishing the same thing.
Oh no, I didn't say they weren't prologues. I'm just pointing out they're very different.
Mm,
One is more like a message to himself, and another one is more like someone telling a story.
like this is like the narrator setting you up with the tone, promise of the world.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Where like I was saying with Kirk, it's more like he's entering in his log that's going to be read by someone from Starfleet,
Hmm.
because Starfleet's going to sit there and review his logs after he comes back home.
Eli brought up a really interesting point. Eli said nothing wrong with Once Upon a Time, especially since you're doing a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me throw this question then back to you guys. If I started a one page, whatever the prologue is, right? It's not going to be a POV. Maybe it's a song, maybe it's some type of narration. Who knows? But if I started it with Once Upon a Time, and you guys, Soul, Calvin, I know you guys have enough knowledge of Scarecrow to know probably an overall idea of the tone of the book. Would Once Upon a Time make it feel not would it match the tone? So when I think of Once Upon a Time, I think fairy tale. And I think
If
to an
there,
extent, there's like a dark fairy. It's like fairy tale aspects to it. Yeah, I don't know.
my opinion, if you're talking like 200 years ago with the Grimm fairy tales, you'd be right in there with.
How did the Grimm fairy tales start off? I haven't read the Grimm fairy tales.
I haven't read them in a long time, but the reason I mentioned the Grimm fairy tales, they're very dark.
They are, and I think maybe I should take that model. Maybe I should take that. I'm curious if they start off with prologues. If there's anybody in the chat who's read any of the Grimm fairy tales, please drop a comment. Yeah, recently. I've seen some of the movies, right? So we've seen a number of the Grimm fairy tale based movies, but I've never read the books.
The only problem I would have with Once Upon a Time, it might come off as being more like today's light fairy tales.
That is true.
You might get a wrong impression that someone might read that first line of Once Upon a Time and might give it to their 9-year-old kid.
Yeah. I can actually see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was the same. I think that goes hand in hand with the same thing that I'm working on with the revised chapter 1 of that. It's technically they're both blank. Scarecrow's a blank slate character, so the language is very simple. Crow's language is very simple because he's a crow. So all the descriptions and language is meant to be simple. But based on what everyone shared, they said it came across almost for a younger reader in that first chapter. So for a book that's supposed to be like very dark fantasy adventure, and even though it's right for the characters, it might be wrong for the reader if it comes across that it's not for a mature reading experience. It's that same type of idea, I think.
To be honest, your target audience would be people who used to watch like Fantasia, used to watch Never Ending Story.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about Never Ending Story, for example, has dark elements to it. Let's face facts. We're all traumatized with the horse dying.
I've never even seen that. I'm traumatized by that.
Man. What could be a better tone promise for a book than Once Upon a Time? Just as far as marketing goes, should you call a story that wouldn't match the tone of Once Upon a Time a fairy tale? Interesting. Well, everyone, thank you all for the ideas and feedback. I'm going to keep brainstorming and thinking through what feels right. But this definitely helps. And Soul Calvin, because I know we've been talking about my stuff a little bit. Is there any things that you guys are like struggling with, like developmentally wise or structurally in either of your books?
No, at least for myself, since I've been working more like on the couple fan fictions lately, and I'm starting to I'm actually starting today rewriting one. I will admit I'm not entirely sure which direction I'm going to go with it, but that's more because I'm taking something that was written almost a year ago, and I'm reworking it. I'm expanding on it, so it's like I have an idea what I'm doing, but I also don't.
Is that how you usually go about development, though?
Not really.
Is that part of your process, or just like this new?
No. This was for anyone who's actually looked at my fan fiction. It's the choices we make. It was the first fan fiction I've written since high school.
Wow.
I've actually been thinking for a while redoing that one. I was rereading it like a couple weeks ago, and I was just sitting there like, this is not bad, but there is so much missing. I actually took it into a story analyzer today. I found one through AutoCrit, and just sometimes I really actually like using AI stuff like that to give me an idea without having to hunt down somebody to read it. Because it actually did give me some ideas of, I could really expand on this part. I could do this. I could do that. It's like, okay, here's a plot hole. Here's an inconsistency that I hadn't noticed that actually seemed kind of minor at the time. And it's like, I could actually do something with this. And that's why I decided to kind of go ahead and rewrite it now. Plus, I mean, I know what I'm doing with A Debt Unpaid, which I finally got named. My other One Piece bingo one.
I like that name, by the way. A Debt Unpaid.
Yeah, I actually got that because I played on the Superstition of Sailors. Basically, if you save somebody's life and they save yours back, you're considered even, right? what happens if you save them from an entirely different kind of situation? For example, one character is saved from the gallows. The other character is saved from starvation. It's still saving their lives, but one is from a situation that he really should not have survived, and the other was completely preventable. Well, maybe not completely, but... So I ended up thinking, well, what if at least the pirate doesn't consider this a debt repaid because it's an entirely different kind of saving his life?
That sounds like a lot of fun, though.
Oh yeah, no, it's a ton of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Do you ever consider in your fan fiction? I know you've done a little bit of crossed genres before, but do you ever consider like going to a completely different universe?
Like, how do you mean?
Because I know you predominantly write in One Piece.
Oh, so like if I go from One Piece but write like from a different fandom?
Mm-hmm. Do you ever consider doing
I have done that once. I wrote in the Harry Potter universe. I did a crossover Harry Potter One Piece because somebody wanted a crossover.
That was still a crossover though. Like you still had One Piece in it. Does that count as a complete
Technically
switch?
It does because it was One Piece characters in the Harry Potter universe.
Mm-hmm.
And
so if you were to like do another fandom, would it be Harry Potter?
It's either going to be Harry Potter or Pokemon.
You know what? Oh my goodness.
Actually, no, scratch that. It's either going to be Harry Potter, Pokemon, or Warriors. And I'm not going to tell you how many fan fictions I've written of Warriors that never got published because it's an embarrassing amount.
But hopefully you had fun.
Oh wow.
Man, guys, I was like, I want to say a while back. So I remember growing up, I collected all the Pokemon cards. Anybody who was like a fan of Pokemon, drop a comment. I'd love to hear. But I remember just going to school one day, and this was way back in elementary school, and for some reason, Pokemon was the fad and it was the trend, and suddenly everybody in the school was like trading Pokemon cards, like it was like a thing, and it only lasted for a few weeks. It was just the funniest thing ever. But I remember collecting so many Pokemon cards when I was younger, and then a little while back, I finally sold the collection. I was like, finally did.
Oh geez, dude.
I held on to it for a really long time, but I hit a point where I was like, if there is any time in my life where I wanted to make an investment into myself, I 100% this is the time. I feel so confident in what I'm doing, so I felt like it was a really great investment. But it was still just like the sentimental value of all those, of collecting all those cards.
Yeah. I didn't really collect the Pokemon cards, but now I collect One Piece cards, and just it's still that kind of there's something about collecting that is just awesome. Okay, I want to answer something Mary just said. Planning to use fan fiction to get established. No. I write fan fiction more to practice than anything, and because, well, I'm entirely obsessed with One Piece. But no, I use it mainly just to practice. As much as I would love to use it to get my name out, I'll say this: I write primarily under one name, and that's Soul Wolf. But I do have another name that I use for some of my works that are coming up that I don't really want attached to the typical stuff I've been doing, because it's a hell of a lot darker and a hell of a lot more descriptive, to the point it almost does feel like a different author. Really? If I could use it to get my name out, that would be awesome, and I would love to do that. But I
feel like with fan fiction, especially with how consistently you write, so I feel like it's more like almost like a resume builder in a sense. Like it's something that adds to your catalog.
Pretty much.
People are like, hey, I like what they write. Oh, I happen to love One Piece. What else do they have, right?
Honestly, on my resumes and then my card.io that I've shared through the Discord, there's actually a link to my AO3 account. So if people actually get my card, which I share with my resume to which I shared with potential employers before, they actually can click on the AO3 link and they will see my fan fictions. But people cannot look at my fan fictions and find me in real life.
Interesting. It's interesting because I think I'm at a point where all of the work that I'm doing is writing related. So I kind of connect everything I do to my online presence. So anybody on LinkedIn, all the LinkedIn stuff, which anybody who's not LinkedIn is a very highly underused, utilized platform. But LinkedIn, everybody knows that all my writing, all my stuff, I even keep all my customer service stuff on there. I feel like it just shows that I have a lot of experience dealing with people.
Yeah.
A lot of experience. So, dude, I calculated that. I did coffee shops for about 10 years. And then I had to go back and calculate. I'm like, all right, how many people do I feel like I interacted with? Because a lot of coffee shops. And I think I calculated the number was somewhere between 6 to 800,000 people of anywhere between 5-second interactions to hours throughout the course of a 10-year period.
Jeez.
It's crazy to think about, right?
Wow.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Oh man. But let's see. There's a couple of comments in here. Let's see where we at. Mario saying practice is an excellent idea. I have done essays and dialogue exercises and more that will never be considered for publishing. Yeah, guys, I've said this before. I thought for the longest time I was a failure as a writer because I wasn't publishing stuff, and I wasn't getting my scripts, my screenplays optioned and on the screen. So I thought I was a failure as a writer. It wasn't until I hit this part of my journey last year when I realized that I had literally just spent the last 25 years of my life practicing for this part of my career. True talk. Man, I think that's writing's. It's such a journey, my friends. Do you guys ever think back to when you were first started out with your writing?
Sometimes, of course, for me, that depends on exactly when do I consider myself
Having
as
first
actually writing versus when am I just having fun, which, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever actually had that distinction.
You don't think you have?
No, because I started working on Pirates when I was 12. And I wasn't sitting down just kind of bumming around doing who knows what with it. I actually had been working on it from the start with the intent of eventually getting it on a shelf.
I guess that's a good point. And I mean, that is what I did with, that's what I did with my first book I wrote as well. So, I mean, I sat in the back of my class between grades probably 7 and grades 11. And all I did was write.
Yeah.
And then
It's fun being known as that kid, right?
I was definitely known as a writer, but I was able to multitask. The teachers would call me and they would like assume that I'd be wrong because I'm sitting back in the class. I'm like, no, I can do 2 things at once. It always cracked me up. But then everyone always knew me as the writer. And I was fine with that because I loved writing.
I have to agree with that. I was the same way. Everybody was like, hey, where's Soul? Oh, he's just sitting there in the back of the class on his laptop writing. And they were correct like 99.9% of the time.
That's funny. That's absolutely funny. Let's see. We had a good comment, Lynn. You're like, oh, I keep my pen name away from my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is always for my medical executive career. And I think it's always important with social media, right? When we're balancing different personas, I think it's clear to know what is our intent with each online persona that we want to have, right?
Yeah.
I blend everything together now, but I wasn't always like that, right? When I was going purely for customer service work. And I think that this just changes for everybody. I think that's a good call out. Absolutely. Let's see. Heather, just saw you're dealing with a migraine. Hopefully you are feeling all right, my friend. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you. Eli was like, Ella, I came to the realization that writing is the only thing I enjoy doing that doesn't feel like a waste of time, like playing video games or something. And I think this is the challenge, right? Like you guys all know, like I've always loved gaming. Gaming has always been a passion of mine. But do video games create any type of like long-lasting skill? People can always argue hand-eye coordination, intelligence-based things, but is it like an actionable skill if you're not in the gaming industry? Debatable. For me, I've always looked at gaming as a hobby that is a really good stress reliever for myself.
I mean, I've always looked at video games as just a way to relax. You know, my
Right?
friend,
Mhm.
my friend doesn't like. He kind of rips me. He's like, "Oh, you always play games on easy." It's like, yes, because I want to relax, not stress myself out.
I always the problem is I'm a completionist, so I have to do everything in a game. Like this is why I don't start new games these days. Like the last real game I got into was Elden Ring, and that was not recent. Because I have to do everything in the game. It's like it's too much.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I know for
But I think the
myself.
one thing I do think take away though as a writer is I take away the storytelling. Like I personally am
Mhm.
an RPG fan, so like I always have to get games, and I do the same thing with film and television, where I analyze the story and I want to make sure like does the story work? Does it not work? Why? How can I adapt things or take things and then use it in my own storytelling later?
Yeah, I've done that too with
Mhm.
games because a lot of what I play is like really story rich stuff. I know for myself with video games, a lot of it is well, I can't murder people in real life. So I have to do it in the game.
To get all your frustration.
But no, some like depending on the game, I like to try to complete everything. It varies. Am I playing Skyrim? Am I playing Spiritfarer? Am I playing Harvest Moon? And I will admit, the way I grew up, I didn't really learn like a lot of adult skills. I actually learned more adult skills from playing video games
That's
and
interesting.
getting married, kind
Mhm.
of like almost after I became an adult, really.
Mhm. And what
And
you learn through
so,
education.
hmm,
Than what you learn through education.
my education taught me something. I went to a high school that prioritized business.
Uh,
I am a creative type. I did not thrive there. It sucked.
that's so
I learned most of
challenging.
what I know through books and video games, and well,
That's
basically being
interesting.
forced into the adult world and being like, "Oh crap, I better learn how to do this now, or I'm going to die."
So did all that business stuff, is it helping you out as you think about the business stuff you'll need in the future?
Unfortunately, no, because I don't remember crap from school.
Ah, like, dang it. I should have recorded those sessions.
Well, hey, I dropped out halfway through my senior year and went
Mhm.
back and got my high school diploma elsewhere the next year. So,
Interesting.
yeah, that school is it's not a bad school. It
Mhm.
was just a bad school for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to a UC for writing, for creative writing. I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. I'll be in debt for any foreseeable future with student debt. So the trade-off, was it worth it? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, who knows, but I wouldn't be here today if I didn't go on that part of my journey. So regardless of the consequences, I'm grateful for the journey that I've taken personally.
Mhm.
Really great call out. Lillian said, I wrote my first short story at age 6. That's so awesome, my friend. If I was a deer and you won too. It's
I
actually
gotta
really
know, do you still have that?
yeah, I know, right? That's what I always wonder when we have our stories from really young. I think I wrote my first story at age 7. It was some type of like, and it was a poem actually, because the first it was for some type of like poetry thing in class. But Eli asked another great question. What's your favorite TV show from the story POV? I know we can always go into our favorite media all day, every day. I know I've said this before, but I think one of the best POV. Okay, a TV show that I think has the strongest POV from start to finish, with a season finale that serves the character, is Breaking Bad. There are a lot of great shows like Game of Thrones, you guys know, right? There's highs and lows, but I think Breaking Bad serves the character journey correctly from the beginning to the end. So I think Breaking Bad would be the all-time strongest story, start to finish. I think one of the strongest video game stories was probably The Last of Us, which is probably why it's doing well. But I think the first Last of Us is one of the strongest.
Mm.
Yeah, I will admit I didn't see a lot of Breaking Bad, but from what little I know of it, it actually did seem to have a really strong story.
Hmm.
The Last of Us actually did seem to be pretty fleshed out, even though I never actually finished the game.
Hmm.
I always liked Life is Strange, the first one, like the
I love
original.
Life is Strange. Life is Strange is actually a really, really great story. I love those Telltale
I
the
did
games.
not see that ending coming with Rachel,
It was
and
good.
it was, I should have, considering how things were going, but it really caught me by surprise,
Mhm.
and I really had to appreciate that. From a
Yeah,
show perspective,
have you played the recent Last of Us game?
um, no, I haven't played the most recent one. I've played Life is Strange, Life is Strange 2, Life is Strange 3, Captain Spirit, but I have not played the latest one. I cannot really play games like I used to, and not because of time, because my laptop is going to catch fire if I try. Um, but I'm thinking if I ever get the chance, I'm going to try that one because it. I like the fact that they continue Chloe, and I want to see what they do with her.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
I will say for TV shows, my two
Mhm.
favorites, so and partially because, well, one of them didn't really start getting good until recently.
Mhm.
Um, First was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mhm.
The
Okay.
storyline from that I've always thought was really solid.
I'm asking
And
myself if there's any weak moments of Airbender.
there was maybe the one filler
Maybe.
episode when they were in the Earth Kingdom
Yeah.
where where we got it was like Appa's lost days, and Aang like made like that zoo for the
Mhm.
animals using earth bending, and
Mhm.
that episode, it wasn't weak per se, it's just
It
it
was
was
complete
more a
filler.
filler.
Breaking Bad had an episode like that. It's an episode where he's stuck in the thing cooking the drugs, and it's called The Fly, and it's an episode about a fly distracting him. It's the one episode that I was like, it's just it's not a good
Well,
episode.
I mean, that's
Short
like
narratively.
that's like Naruto when it ends after the fight of the valley in the end. It is
Mhm.
like 100 episodes of filler.
But I mean, I think anime is a little different, and I think anime is more challenging because there's so much more filler. I think if we're following purely like storytelling for anime, it'd probably be better to stick more closely to the graphic
The
novels or the
manga.
books. Yeah, the manga. So I'm like, what
Yeah.
it's called. It'd
Yeah,
be better to stick to the manga because the manga is the straight storytelling and
yeah.
is less likely to do filler.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One Piece
And
is
that's not the
really
same
bad
for
at
all
that.
anime, but the mainstream animes, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach,
Bleach.
yeah, those mainstream animes do tend to have a lot of filler.
An anime that's actually pretty good that has really no filler is Code Geass.
I
That is a
love Code Geass. Code Geass was my second all-time favorite anime after Death Note because it follows the same exact character arc. Anti-hero, godly power, now suddenly does all this evil stuff, and I loved that character journey. Except
yeah.
Code Geass is like there's mechs. It's like the mech and the sci-fi aspect is the background of it
Oh,
instead of magic death gods.
that's what drew me to it was the nightmares.
Mm-hmm. I think Code Geass did a better job though of ending and tying off the protagonist, the character journey. Death Note struggled a little bit with how they ended the character journey. Code Geass handled it better. So yeah. Let's see, what do we got? So we have, let's see in the chat. Lynn, that's awesome. First story was a Star Wars fanfic at age 8. So you've been a Star Wars fan all your life. I think the question to Star Wars fans is always Jedi or Sith. Who are you? Calvin, Jedi or Sith? Who would you be?
I would prefer to be a gray Jedi. They're like in the middle. They're neither really good nor bad.
Are those the ones with the white sabers?
Uh, no, they're actually I think yellow.
All right. Let's see. And what else? Guys, I have to handle something 1 second. Talk about something.
I will say the only other show I think has a good storyline, if you don't include all the damn fillers, but is One Piece, and only recently because Oda actually started giving us information.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, since Skypiea, it's like, holy crap, we have all this background information that is filling out the world, and it's just like, character development is good, but the storyline is just kind of like going from like 60 to 1,000 at this point, so, and it's just getting
And
better.
By the way, look who we have joining us. Let me welcome to the stage Crazy Root Bear. Welcome back, Crazy.
The references, you people were driving me crazy. The references, oh good lord, the references, the Star
Crazy.
Wars, the
So something tells
Pokemon.
me that you're a Sith and you're going the dark side.
You're darn right, I would. In a heartbeat.
Like
Actually,
no hesitation.
none whatsoever. Actually, when we were talking about video games and storylines, the two video games that resonate for me with storylines are Final Fantasy VII. And that,
Seven always Final Fantasy 7 is always everyone's favorite. Cloud Story is always everyone's favorite.
it had
Final
the most.
Fantasy 9 was my first favorite personally.
Seven had the most complete storyline, really. And there is
I would agree with that.
there is a game called Xenogears that has a very
I like
great
Xenogears.
storyline.
Xenogears
I
was
just
fun.
I just wish they had finished it. It's actually
Almost.
it's actually incomplete.
Yeah, that brings me back. That was like one of those games where the story started off really strong, and then they just never. I think something to do with the studio. Like the studio went
They ran out.
under.
They ran out of time. They just
Mm.
they had to get it done in X amount of time, and they're like, we don't have enough time to really do a second disc. So that's why the second disc is more like a storybook. Cloud
Mhm.
and Ellie sitting in the chair telling the story rather than exploring the world.
Eli actually mentioned a really great video game, Knights of the Old Republic. Any
Yes.
Star Wars fans, Coder was a great game.
Yes.
Great RPG that really did a lot of justice to that style of gameplay.
That's what really launched BioWare was that game.
You think Coder was what launched BioWare?
Oh yeah, because
Interesting.
after that they
And
came
I
out
mean,
with
Coder 2 did very well too. Coder
oh,
2 was like different storyline, but it felt like improved gameplay, they improved a lot of the things, but it was still a lot of fun.
Coda 2 basically went to the people, what do you like? What do you dislike? And they're like, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to keep everything you like. We're going to get rid of everything you dislike, and we're going to improve upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Mass Effect is also a fairly fun BioWare game to play.
Yes.
Mass Effect is fun. Mass Effect is definitely fun.
The only thing I'll agree with, I think is kind of stupid when you play the second one,
Mhm.
is they have this one expansion pack that's supposed to be the Reapers arriving, but you can play it
Mhm.
within the first few missions of the game. And it's like, okay, this shouldn't even be accessible until after you've beaten the game.
Oh man, and yeah, that's. I think it's challenging when you have a game like that, and if the difficulty is too high, and then you're not able to get it, it kind of puts up a barrier to a lot of gamers.
Yeah.
Again, this is why I play most of my games on easy.
Now I was gonna say I agree with you, Calvin. I play my games on easy too.
Guys,
People
guys,
are
it's
like,
all about the hard games that challenge you to grow as a gamer, guys. Dark Souls, the Souls games, it's all about improving your strategy and your gamer skill set.
Yeah, but if that's great for someone who has aspirations to be a professional gamer, I
mhm.
don't.
You know, I don't
just
have aspirations to be a professional gamer, but I do like challenging myself.
I just look at it as games aren't supposed to be stressful. They're supposed to be
yes,
fun.
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
Now I will be honest. When I want a game to make me think, I'll play one of my
Mhm.
strategy games. I'll play an
Yeah,
RTS because that'll make
yeah,
you
Like
think.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
I was thinking more
RTS
along the line of StarCraft, but Yu-Gi-Oh works too.
Oh my goodness, guys! I grew up on all the Blizzard games. I remember one of the first games. My dad had a Windows DOS, had one of those old computers, and the first game that he was playing was Warcraft 1, the very first Warcraft.
I've never played that.
And
I started off on
it was
Warcraft
so
2.
cool at the time, though. It was so cool at the time. Everything those were the graphics and the vibes. I think StarCraft. What I'm always surprised about is that they haven't been able to transition the StarCraft universe into a live format of some type yet, because of all their storylines. Like they tried Warcraft, but I think StarCraft has a very interesting story. They're
Well,
very
it's
much
kind of
focused on Diablo right now.
well,
I'm also surprised with Warcraft that they didn't focus on the Arthas story, the Lich Knight storyline, which is like the best story. I think it's the most well told story of the Warcraft ones.
Well, the problem is that I was reading this article that talked about with the designers that ever since EA took over more
Mhm.
Blizzard Studios, they've been more focused on profit, and it was pointed out that they could easily make a skin for $10 and make millions off it, and they'd rather do that than make a game that has a great storyline.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I'm not surprised by that actually. That is not
Yeah.
surprising. Unfortunate, but
Actually,
what are you gonna do?
games that still challenge me and actually just beat it was the old Command and Conquer games.
Command and Conquer was fun actually. I think I remember playing. I remember playing those original ones.
Oh, I just bought the master. I bought like the master remastered set that has every freaking Command and Conquer game, and I just beat Command and Conquer Firestorm. That took me 6 days to beat the final mission.
I could have sworn there was like a bonus level on one of them, and I think it was like an ant level, and you like have to go fight ants.
That was in Command and Conquer Counter Strike, and you
Yes,
had
I
to beat
remember
every
that.
Counter Strike mission to
Mhm.
get that level.
Megan, you are speaking my vibe here. One of my favorite RPGs growing up was Kingdom Hearts. I loved how I had an appreciation for Disney because I really enjoyed playing it on musically, but I liked the idea that Final Fantasy could be combined with Disney characters and you could
Yes,
still have a fun game. I really appreciated that.
yes,
Awesome.
that is very
So
true.
definitely a lot of really great game conversations here. As we're hitting the hour mark, you guys want to get some writing done?
I
Yes.
actually have to get back to work, so I
You
will
are
talk to you guys.
totally all good.
Nah, my boss left me with like a stack 3 inches thick of paperwork, and he's like, "Can you try to get this done tonight?" And I'm thinking like, "Fuck, all right, I'll do it."
Right. I might as well. While I'm at work, I guess I'll do work.
Oh, that is awesome.
Well,
Man.
he usually never has me doing this anymore, but he's like, "Could you please do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll get it done." And everyone's like, "Oh, you should charge more. You should make them pay you more money for this." And I'm like, "Look, this is not the hill I want to die on."
You got to wait till it's a fight that you really need to win.
I will be honest. Some people pick the stupidest things to fight over. That it's like, why are you why are you fighting over this? Just do what they ask.
Well, I think it's because they want to fight because they're projecting other things that they
This is
I guess
not
it's
the work
projection.
you're looking for.
Well, as I said, protective equipment and freaking what I'm supposed to do as my work duties is not the hills I want to die on. Anyhow,
Awesome.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks for stopping by, Kelvin.
No problem. Have a good night, guys. Oh, hey, hey, Soul, did you ever look at that pirate video I sent you?
I haven't had a chance yet. This week I've been kind of more focused on keeping that thing alive.
Well, if you want
Oh,
a good laugh, if you want a good laugh, go check it out.
I need to.
guys. By the way, I should do a shout out while people are here. Go vote. Everyone who's in the book club, go vote. Go vote for April's pick. Our April book is science fiction. So everyone go vote on the top 4 books that you want to read. And if Kaufman was ready, he would have the link to drop.
Like a boss.
Also, before that actually reminds me, so there's I think about like 5 or 6 days left on the poll for anybody who's interested in doing a stream with me, kind of like a writing sprint chat thing. So far, it looks like Saturday is going to be the night.
Mm-hmm.
But if anybody still has like another idea, we still have at least a few days left on that, and I'd say Monday morning I will message you, Kaufman, about what time the first one's going to be.
Okay, because
So you can
as I
like,
recall, you're starting at sometime in April, right?
yeah, I was thinking about not the fifth because I'm going to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking the next week possibly, so that would be the 12th. I'm either going to start the 12th or the 19th if I go with Saturdays, which I'm
Okay.
probably going to.
Okay.
Unless more people are like, oh wait, no, I can't do Saturday, I can only do Thursday, or whatever like that. So
And for anybody who's just hopping into the stream, so over on our Right Now Discord, for anyone who's not in the Discord, which if you're not in the Discord, you're missing out. Discord link invite down in the YouTube description down below. But Soul's going to be hosting. I was like, Soul, you're in this direction. Soul's going to be hosting it's like a very informal, like writers hangout sesh, right?
yep, pretty much.
What all are you going to do?
Yeah, like think of like what we're doing here, more or less, but it's not going to be quite so. We have talks and then we do sprints. It's going to be a little bit more like what Kaufman does during the week. Is I'm going to have my screen up and be working on a fan fiction or one of my
like a
books.
little bit more of like a co-working session in a sense.
Pretty much, and people can come in, they can chat and be like, "Oh, hey, I need help with this. Hey, can I just like hang out here while I work?" And accountability kind of thing. Just it's supposed to be like super casual.
I love it. So, and then so you're going to try it out for, is this like a once a week type of deal, or you're going to try it once a month?
This will be a once a week thing. And yeah, I just looked at the poll, and we've got 5 days left, but so far, yeah, unless like a bunch of people come in suddenly, it looks like it's going to be Saturday. It's going to be like in the Saturday evenings.
And I am always a fan of more opportunities to write.
Oh yeah.
For us to force ourselves to write. That is always
I kind of want to have it as like a casual hangout, chat, accountability kind of thing. So just come in, write, chat about anything related to writing. Keep in mind that I am not going to have a censor or filter on this group, so there might be things mentioned that maybe shouldn't be mentioned in front of kids.
I absolutely love that. And you guys know from like the weekend streams on the Right Now YouTube channel that our weekend streams tend not to be writing sprint focused, since we tend to do critique stros, the podcast, specialty things. So I love that there's going to be an opportunity for writing during the weekend, which I think is really cool. So awesome. We'll make sure to announce more as it gets closer in April and once everything's set in stone, but very, very cool. So thanks again for sharing that.
Yeah, no, totally.
And awesome. So I think I am all ready here. Let's see what we got. All right, here we go. And I think I am all set. I just got to screen share. So I'm thinking, and I think I liked this last time. We're going to do one single sprint. So that way we're not worried about breaks. We're going to do one 45-minute sprint. So we'll stay a little bit more productive, and we'll come back and check in at the end of our writers group today. All right. I feel all ready. Let's try to see what progress we can get. I feel good on Scarecrow. So whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, author branding, procrastinating, or you just want to come hang out with us, that is all part of the process. Come join us because it's time to write now. I was muted. Writing sprint done. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How did that sprint turn out for you, my friend?
Let's see. Finish the first chapter. I am maybe getting to the midway point of the second.
Okay, that seems like a good place to be. Were you able to get a solid amount of words done?
A little over 1,200.
Nice,
My
nice,
husband
nice.
kept coming
nice.
in and having me sniff something to test it, but
Like, well, I got to keep the husband happy, right?
yeah. He's dealing with his cricket thing that he's doing now, so and he's gone.
Kick me out for a second, but yes. So it sounds like we are having some good progress. How'd everyone do in the chat? Were you able to get some words and some progress in? Hopefully. Megan on Zoom, 123 words tonight so far. Nice. I had to start off with some admin that I had to take care of first. And then I was doing a revision of the back end of the last chapter I wrote. So I'm at that part of the story soul where I'm starting to introduce a lot of minor characters. Trying to think of what all the different animals are that are worth introducing. I've had people suggest a lot of different animal types. I was like, I don't know, whatever animal type. So what animal do you want to see in Scarecrow? What's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal would be a snow leopard.
Oh, it's kind of cool. I do actually. Wait, do I have a leopard? I think I have a jaguar. How similar are jaguars and leopards? Are they pretty similar or not really?
So I mean, they're both big cats. Jaguars can roar. Snow leopards can't. Entirely different territories and temperature that they can withstand.
And I'm also thinking of a cheetah as well.
Cheetah, and I think a cheetah and a leopard would be a little more closely related, or a cheetah and a jaguar be more closely related than to a snow leopard.
Yeah,
the snow leopards are Himalayan, and jaguar and cheetah are both African. Well, no,
I just pulled this up. I was kind of curious.
I correct myself. Jaguar is Amazon.
Let's see. Yeah, so I just pulled this up. I was just kind of curious what popped up on a Google result, because they're all like cat type species, and of course there's the tiger in here as well. When I think about like the cat type species I have in the novel, the tiger is an antagonist. I think I have a leopard. There's like a leopard form, but the leopard form is like one of the preferred ones of a shapeshifter. So it's not actually like a leopard. But I'm trying to. It's either a leopard or a jaguar. That's the thing. I'm trying to go back and forth. I don't remember.
Well, do you want something from Africa with a kind of more of a dry temperament, or do you want something from the rainforest?
I guess
because that would be the difference there.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, I think because I have such a collection, such a variety of animals in this part of the book, I think what would be the most interesting species, because I'm really trying to like 30 animals in a coliseum, and I'm really trying to capture as many species as possible. I really am.
Snow leopard actually might be a good choice.
At the end of the world, which species would really be the ones that survived in this type of setting? So those are like the questions I ask myself.
Well, let's see. I know, like if you would go like with a leopard form, you'd also have to think though, because there's two different kinds of leopards. Well, I mean, there's more than two, but like with like a regular leopard, you're thinking of like Africa. You'd be thinking of like a dry temperament, and then if you got snow leopard, you're thinking of the Himalayan mountains. It's a wide gap there on where they could survive. So you'd have to think of, if you want to go with like any of the big cats, what kind of big cat is it? Because even with tigers, you've got Bengal versus Siberian, entirely different temperature areas.
So that's a really good point. I mean, I think a lot of the species, I don't think I refer to specific species types. But I think I can get away with it in a world where most of the characters don't even remember who they are, their identity to an extent. So I think almost species, subspecies types are getting lost in a sense.
That actually is a good point.
So I think I can get away with it for that reason, and not having to differentiate what type of tiger the tiger is, except based on how it looks. But granted, then I have to have the different types between, like, there's obviously a difference between a leopard and a jaguar, right? And I think those distinctions need to be made.
Yeah, no, that is true. And even then with leopards, snow leopards versus a regular leopard, even without the temperature, a lot of different. Snow leopards, their tails are as long as their bodies. They sit lower to the ground. They're more for like jumping. While like, not that leopards don't do that, but jumping into a tree versus jumping up a mountain is a lot different, and the legs are going to be structured differently.
Which of the cat-like animals do you think are the most resilient?
Most resilient?
Or are they pretty equal on resiliency? That's probably the one I'd have to go with. Simply because
That's
the weather type.
Because there's a lot of big cats out there, and resiliency can mean a lot of things. It can mean adaptability to the world, or simply like
probably adaptability in a severe weather type world where the weather is adverse.
Let's see, where the weather is diverse.
That's why I felt good about the tiger as an antagonist.
Yeah, because like even like Bengal versus Siberian, they could, within reason, could possibly move further north or south and be fine. While a lion or a leopard or a cheetah would probably have a harder time in a colder climate.
That's a good point. I think the only species or the only type of animal that I'm going to have trouble showing at this part of the story is amphibians, sea-type animals, because there's no water. I mean, it's...
if you want a resilient cat, you could go with a cougar.
Cougar's not a bad idea.
Because they live almost near like the Canadian border even, and all the way down to Central America.
That's a really good point. That's a good idea. I have I'm like at this part of the novel, I knew that I was going to have to be more aware and focused on the animal types, because in the rough draft, I just picked random animals. And I'm really trying to be more intentional because I want it to be representative.
Right.
I want it to be as representative as possible. Thanks for that. Thanks, appreciate that. Let's see. In the chat, Megan, 123 words. Awesome, my friend. Lillian, 800. Nice, Lillian. Sounds like you made some awesome progress. Let's see. How far did I get? Like I said, I started off admin, and then I started reviewing this last chapter. How did I get? I got... Let's see. It looks like... All right, so it looks like I got there about revision at 1,200 words. So, yeah, I mean, so the thing that I think that's working out well for me is like the first third of Scarecrow took me a lot longer because of rewriting, but my pacing is starting to pick up. Because the back end of the book, there's just less rewriting because it was closer to the story elements that I had determined.
Yeah,
I think that's why.
It always seems like the back of the book is is less likely to be edited than the front of the book.
So yeah, where did you feel pretty successful though with the sprint for your stuff that time?
Yeah, because since I'm expanding my fan fiction, I actually got to explore the backstory for the main original character. And I didn't do that the first time. The first time, I mean, we obviously knew who Osa was. This abandoned kid with devil fruit abilities who was abandoned because of his devil fruit abilities. And this time, I actually went in and we actually get to see him surviving before the story really even starts. So we have a better idea of...
Kind of get to do like extra character development with this character.
Yeah, because he has a lot of nervous habits throughout the story. He's constantly shifting out his ears and tail. And we know that he's nervous, but we don't really know why. Now with his backstory, I can kind of expand on why he's like that.
Well, that's really cool. Sounds like you had a very productive sprint, which is awesome. I kind of do like doing the longer sprints. I do try to find balance because it's. I know some of the other author tubers do go straight into longer sprints, but I feel like shorter ones makes it a little more accessible for writers to kind of get into the writing.
It seems like the shorter ones seem more built for like those who are, procrastinating or don't have a lot of time, and the longer ones are for the people that are like, okay, I really have this thing I need to do. Let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, which is why I try to find that balance. But I think with the writers group, I think we're all of us who show up are all pretty like committed to what we're working on. So I feel like that's why like the longer sprint kind of starting to feel better with writers group.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so that brings us to the 2-hour mark. As always, I appreciate you for showing up. Can you believe that tonight is 39th session? This 39th meeting of writers group. Next week is meeting number 40.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
39 meetings ago. So what were we getting ourselves into?
Yeah, no, but you know what? I'm never going to regret actually doing this because this is just so much fun.
I know. I love the writers group. I really do. Writers group is like, I know I'm streaming daily, but writers group gives me like an extra motivation. And I think I like the format where it's like the daily writing streams, you guys know, is like mostly me, myself talking to a camera, talking to you guys. But I like this because I feel like I get to talk with the other writers on stream. And I think I like the randomness of writing miscellaneous, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's actually kind of why I wanted to do the writers group, because again, it's like you just said, you're actually talking to people and not just to a camera.
Yeah, exactly.
And that always feels just a little better.
Agreed. Well, Sol, I appreciate you, but I think that's all that we got for tonight.
Yeah.
Everyone, make sure to come back and join us next week. Yeah, that's all that I got. Sol, you're awesome. Everyone can find Sol everywhere.
Yeah, just look me up as Chat Soul on the Discord. Any questions, anybody need editing or creation services, just message me whenever.
Awesome. And if you guys need any more additional streaming, well, I'll be back tomorrow with another daily motivation stream. 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'll be here. Come back and write. And if you're looking for something else to watch, our previous episodes are linked down in the YouTube description. Come check it out if you missed out and you don't want the writing vibe to end. And don't forget to tap that like button on your way out. Help us show the algorithm that writing streams are cool. But unfortunately, this brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Because it's